Ladies and gentlemen, today we have some breaking news coming out of the Middle East. As it would seem, President Trump is done attempting to negotiate with the Iranian regime. And I'll tell you what, everything going on the ground right now in the Middle East, in Iran, in Israel, really all across the entire region, makes it seem, it is suggesting immediate action will be taken as soon as this weekend, perhaps even tonight. Now, to say the least, it has been a very eventful 24 hours leading up to where we are now. Things are escalating at an exponential rate. We're going to do a crash course and break down everything that has gone on. Now, yesterday, the United States and Iran held a meeting, negotiations in Geneva and Switzerland yesterday afternoon for another round of negotiation talks. The United States, as I'm sure many of you are aware, made the following demands of the Iranian regime. 1, zero uranium enrichment, not allowed anymore. 2, all of Iran's already enriched uranium, and they already have a lot of enriched uranium to varying levels, must be handed over and relinquished to U.S. custody. You're not allowed to have that anymore either. 3, Iran must dismantle every single one of their nuclear enrichment sites, their nuclear locations. Shut all of them down. And then 4th and finally, the Iranian regime must shut down their entire ballistic missile program. Now, some big demands. Trump is done playing games. Really, this was less of a negotiation that took place yesterday afternoon and more of just, listen, this is what we are demanding of you. And if you don't capitulate, then all hell is going to break loose. Now, the interesting component of this dynamic here is that Iran, from all the reports that we have, the Iranian regime seems to have completely rejected, not one, not two, but every single one of the Trump administration's demands that were made yesterday. The Iranian regime has rejected all of them. Now, worth noting, the United States, following this meeting, still has not issued a public statement after yesterday's negotiations with Iran in Geneva. Publicly, technical talks with Iran are actually still scheduled for next week in Vienna, Austria. Right now, the U.S. is still planning on meeting up again with Iran in Vienna for technical talks next week. And Marco Rubio also has a trip scheduled to Israel on Monday and Tuesday of this upcoming week. The trip has not yet been canceled. It's still on, during which he'll be in Israel to talk about the Trump administration's 20-point plan for the Gaza recovery, to rebuild Gaza. But military readiness right now still continues to increase in the Middle East on both the United States. Well, it seems as if both the United States and Israel are what can only be described as setting up an attack posture. Seems like the U.S. and Israel are both kind of getting ready to attack right now. Now, very curiously, President Trump himself has also remained effectively totally silent as a barn mouse following this meeting yesterday's failed negotiations with Iran, something that is, frankly, a little bit uncharacteristic of President Trump. You know, he doesn't exactly keep his opinion to himself. Now, we did hear from Vice President J.D. Vance yesterday evening, who said that the Trump administration has absolutely zero intention of engaging in a, quote, as he said, prolonged war with Iran. Everybody right now is worried that we're going to have another war on terror 2.0, war in the Middle East 2.0, reminiscent of the Bush era. So J.D. Vance came out and said, listen, we are not interested, no interest in a prolonged war with Iran, as he put it yesterday evening. Now, like I said, a lot of action is going on the ground in the Middle East, Israel, in Iraq, in Iran. Big things are happening. Movements are being made right this very moment. And I want to talk about all of that. But first, before we break down what's currently happening now, or really over the last 12 hours, I want you to take a look at this report coming out of Fox News to really put all of this into context.
See all the green dots on the map? These are long-term U.S. military bases operating near Iran. You've got several here in the area of Kuwait. You got Al Udeida Air Base, which is the largest in the entire region. That's in Qatar right here, some around the area of Oman. Heck, you can stretch back to western and southern Turkey as well and find them. All the white dots are the other bases that the U.S. has a military presence in. And you could see it here, right? In Qatar, eastern Saudi Arabia, up here in northern Iraq. So, I mean, the plate is well set set now in terms of bases. Now let's talk about the naval buildup, and this has been quite the armada. Earlier today, we got word that the USS Gerald Ford had moved off the coast of Israel, and then the Roosevelt now is near Crete, the island of Crete in Greece. The Canberra and the Michael Murphy are now in the Persian Gulf. All right, they are positioned, as well as the Santa Barbara and the Mitch are now there in the Gulf of Oman. The president talked about having an armada, and that's what's been assembled here now, nearly surrounding Iran.
Largest U.S. military buildup in the Middle East since 2003, leading into the invasion of Iraq.
To the west and to the south, with Iran perhaps in its sights sometime soon. Jillian Turner is watching the movements at the U.S. Department of State, and she's got more from there now. Jillian?
Good morning to you, Bill. The U.S. Embassy in Israel now says that all non-essential staff, as well as their families, should leave the country if they are able to, if they want to, and it should happen today, Bill. This comes as tension between Washington and Tehran is now ratcheting up by the day. The vice president is going to welcome Oman's foreign minister to the White House shortly to further discuss Iran. This comes after Vance told the Washington Post overnight the Trump team has no intention of engaging in a prolonged war with Iran. The U.S. wrapped third round of nuclear negotiations yesterday in Geneva, a neutral territory. They spoke for many hours and were mediated by officials from Oman. Iran's foreign ministry says this. Take a listen.
Conflicting statements made by some American officials will continue to cast doubts and questions.
Iran says the talks are only focused on nuclear weapons, but the Secretary of State says that's just for right now.
Eventually, we'll have to have conversations about more than just the nuclear program.
Also on the U.S. agenda, Iran's ballistic missile program, its human rights abuses, and support for terrorists. As you mentioned, right now the Pentagon's deployed over a dozen warships and thousands of sailors to the region. 7 days ago now, at the inaugural Gaza Board of Peace meeting, President Trump started the clock.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, that puts everything into context here. Massive buildup. The pressure is being applied to the Iranian regime. And still, it seems as if the Iranian regime is, as of yesterday's meeting, effectively unwilling to capitulate to President Trump's demands. Let's talk about what has happened in just the last 12 hours. Very eventful 12 hours. Okay, we've seen a series of, effectively, Middle Eastern evacuations. Non-essential U.S. personnel have been given the green light to evacuate out of Israel. Non-essential U.S. personnel, like civilians, get out of Israel. That's come out of the U.S. State Department. Non-essential U.S. personnel are also right now evacuating out of Baghdad, Iraq. Canada has instructed its citizens and non-essential individuals to leave both Israel and Iran. Kazakhstan has instructed its citizens to leave Iran immediately. The United Kingdom has withdrawn its embassy staff from Iran and temporarily shut down its embassy in Iran altogether. The embassy's been shut down temporarily. The United Kingdom has also instructed its non-essential personnel to leave Israel as well. China earlier today gave an order urging all of its citizens to leave both Israel and Iran. And by the way, the list here just goes on and on and on and on. Poland, Australia, Brazil, Germany, more countries than we can even mention right now, have all similarly instructed their citizens and non-essential personnel to immediately get the hell out of both Israel and Iran. Seems like the U.S. State Department and sort of the U.S. State Department counterparts in all of these other countries all over the world kind of know something is coming. Seems like they kind of know that some attack or conflict is on the horizon. And by the way, as a little bit of a reminder, we saw similar evacuation orders or orders to get out of Dodge from all these different countries. We saw orders come through about 2 days prior to Operation Midnight Hammer. 8 months ago, 2 days prior to Operation Midnight Hammer, we saw the same thing happen. All these countries stepped up and said, all right, everybody go home. Something is about to happen. Everybody get out. So, like I said, it seems like big things are about to take place here. Let's talk about what's going on the ground right now. So earlier today, this is about 5 hours ago, maybe 6, we are now getting reports that the Israeli military, the IDF, is now pre-placing Iron Dome missile interceptor batteries all across the entire country, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, all over the place. Now the Iron Dome is getting deployed to potentially intercept missiles from Iran or from their terror proxies, Hezbollah, namely. So seems like I said, seems like things are escalating here. The Iron Dome missile interception batteries don't get deployed for no reason at all, to say the least. We also saw, and this is a big deal, we saw, this is the IDF, Israeli Air Force, for the last 24 hours or so, has been strategically striking Hezbollah's weapon storage facilities. Okay, we have a short little video of what that looks like here. This is an Israeli airstrike on a Hezbollah, missile and weapon storage facility. So let's think here for a moment. Why would Israel be blowing up Hezbollah storage facilities right now of all times? Well, if a conflict does break out with Iran, one of the concerns is that the Iranians' terror proxies across the region, of which Hezbollah is one, would help Iran and start firing rockets or missiles into Israel. So Israel right now seems like what they're doing is preemptively trying to neuter as many Hezbollah, weapon storage facilities as they possibly can to prevent them, to prevent Hezbollah from firing back in retaliation, trying to get rid of that threat preemptively. That seems like what's going on right now. We also, very curious report came out today. This is from the IAEA. This is the International Atomic Energy Agency, released a report today saying Iran has stored highly enriched uranium at its Isfahan nuclear facility. The revelation comes after an IAEA report was sent to member states and then seen by Reuters. Uranium, enriched up to a 60% purity rate, close to weapons grade, is reportedly stored right now at the Isfahan nuclear facility in Iran. This is one of the sites that was struck during Operation Midnight Hammer last year. Now, to put this into perspective, it says 60% is almost weapons grade. Technically speaking, anything above 20% is the threshold for what's called highly enriched uranium. 20% plus, highly enriched. Now, the way this works is, technically speaking, if you have enough uranium enriched at a rate of 20% plus, if you have enough of it, you can technically make a nuclear weapon. So a lot of people, they say, well, you need to have 97% enriched for, you actually don't. It's like, if you had enough of 27% enriched, if you had enough of it, you could make a low yield nuclear bomb. It has to be 20%. Now, the more enriched it is, the less you need. But if it's 20% plus, if you stockpile enough of it, you can make a bomb if you're so inclined. And so this is one of the concerns with Iran. We know for a fact, actually for a very long time, that they have been able to enrich up to 60%, and that they have in fact enriched up to 60%. That's one of the big concerns right now. Now, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to make sense of the Iranian logic. If you're the Ayatollah Khamenei, what is going on in your head? What thought process here is guiding the Iranians? Because so far they've refused to capitulate to President Trump. It seems clear to me, considering the Iranian regime has refused to meet the Trump administration's demands, that they've sort of looked at the situation, they've done the calculus here, and they have determined that they stand a better chance ignoring President Trump and then being on the receiving end of a U.S. bombing campaign, which is what we're probably going to see here in the next couple days. They actually prefer that. They've decided to get bombed as opposed to capitulate to President Trump, effectively surrendering, and then looking weak to their own people. Because we all know that right now inside of Iran, there's a huge amount of, what's a good term for this? There's a huge amount of civil discontent, to say the least. We've seen all the protests and we've seen all the riots over the last couple months. Let's call it civil discontent going on in Iran right now. So simply put, it seems as if the Iranian regime is actually more scared of its own people rising up and overthrowing them if they appear weak than it is of President Trump dropping a bunch of bombs all over the country. They seem to think that they're safe, buried deep down inside of their bunkers. They'd rather just try to wait this out in their bunker complexes. And so, hey, this is admittedly, and I think you all know, obviously an incredibly complex situation. Really, only time is going to tell whether or not the Iranian regime's gambit is going to pay off here.